It's time we take a look at the counterpart to Star Wars Ewoks, Star Wars Droids. Star Wars Droids, or its full title, Star Wars Droids: The Adventures of R2-D2 and C-3PO, aired alongside Ewoks as part of the Ewoks and Droids Adventure Hour. However, unlike Ewoks, Droids only lasted one short season. And considering how the second season for Ewoks turned out, that might be for the best. I should mention that both series are available on incomplete DVDs. Ewok's second season was never released, which is common for a lot of shows, but the first seasons of both shows only had 13 episodes. And for some reason, 5 episodes were left off of both DVDs. Why? This doesn't make any sense. If you're going to release a season of a show this short, then why can't you release it all? Apparently, any questions involving the DVD releases of the cartoons to people from Lucasfilm get dodged. I also heard they were going to try and stream both series for free on StarWars.com, but that's yet to happen. It's a shame because, believe it or not, Droids is actually not too bad. Unlike Ewoks, Droids actually followed several story arcs about what C-3PO and R2-D2 supposedly did between episodes 3 and 4. But if you saw episode 3, you know they end up with Bail Organa and subsequently join the Rebels. So basically, this show is not part of the main Star Wars canon. And not just because of the Disney takeover. This and Ewoks were never considered canon. They even got Anthony Daniels to be C-3PO. And here's a fun fact. He's voiced the character almost every time he shows up. In every movie, every TV show, every special, even in commercials.
R2-D2, you found a cigarette! Well, I don't think smoking is grown up at all.
The only time I know for sure he didn't voice C-3PO was in the Phineas and Ferb Star Wars special. Here he was voiced by Simon Pegg.
Now don't you forget this. Why I should stick my neck out for you is quite beyond my capacity.
Shut up, Dengar.
I'm not sure why they didn't get him for this, especially since it aired not long after Disney got Star Wars. Heck, he was in the Star Wars cameo in the Lego movie, for God's sake.
Captain Solo, we must go. You know how perturbed I get if we are not punctual.
The droid's right. Let's roll.
If only Harrison Ford was that dedicated to his character. Anyway, the Droids intro is way better than either of the Ewoks intros. Though it's not one of the best I've heard, and it doesn't quite fit with Star Wars. However, it was performed by Stuart Copeland of The Police.
I wouldn't care, but it's a dangerous affair, 'cause I'm in trouble again, trouble again, trouble.
Like I said, this show followed a few story arcs that lasted 4 to 5 episodes. But strangely, the first story arc was the only one not included on the DVD. It was about 3PO and R2 meeting 2 racers named Jord and Thal. They end up running into a rebel named Kia who's trying to stop a gang from building a giant weapon. The gang is being run by the son of their boss who's trying to incorporate new technology into their business, but it's not being accepted very well.
Look at them. They look like beach wobbers.
It's just a minor malfunction.
For what they cost you to build, I could have got a few of the old boys together. That's the way old Size would have done it.
If it's not a droid, I don't trust it. And I'm not my father. I'm me.
I kinda love these guys. They have a lot of great banter. You could probably write a sitcom about them.
They got away, Tiggy.
Don't call me Tiggy.
In the second story arc, 3PO and R2 and an android are being bought at auction by a miner named Jan. It turns out the android was a prince in disguise that has amnesia and is being pursued by bounty hunters. When they eventually help him regain his memories and thwart the bounty hunters, they team up with a pilot named Jessica. Then they help him overthrow the tyrant that gave him amnesia and negotiate peace with a neighboring world. If the blue people and the purple people can learn to get along, then why can't we? This story actually had an episode that wasn't on the DVD, but it wasn't that good anyway. It focused on some kid and was probably the result of some TV executive know-it-all thinking that kids would like this episode just because it had a kid in it. For the last time, no one likes these kinds of episodes, not even kids! In the final story arc, the droids meet a merchant named Mungo Baobab who's looking for valuable gems called runestones. This one might be my favorite because it's basically one big treasure hunt. Also, Mungo might be the most interesting character in the series because he seems to be the only one that has any kind of character development. His quest for the runestones may come at the cost of the new friends he's made along the way, but he runs into a lost relative of his that spent his entire life treasure hunting and warns him on his deathbed that treasure is not worth a lifetime of loneliness.
If it comes to a choice between people and treasure, family and friends must come first. This I've learned.
He's gone, Mungo.
Rest well, Uncle Ogham.
Yeah, it's pretty standard stuff, but hey, it's something. There's a pretty dark moment in this too. This guy named Kung, who's working with the Empire, sprays a deadly germ over a farming community in order to claim the land.
Kung, you fool! That cloud?
Pure ruse, Admiral. Directed at our enemies below. The vegetation will grow back in a year.
Your methods are too crude, Kung.
We're the Empire. We may have a space station that can blow up a planet, but we would never resort to germ warfare. That's just going too far. But he ends up getting infected himself, and Mungo mercifully gives him the antidote, but because of his pettiness, he doesn't use it in time.
Someday I'll have my revenge, Baobab. I'll hunt you down and see you destroyed. Oh no. No.
Jesus! So R2 and 3PO move between these three stories, but the way they do it is so awkward. In the second story, they just sorta leave, for no reason. In the final one, it's implied that they stay with Mungo. Again, not canon. But at the end of the first story arc, Jord and Thal get offered a job, but their employer doesn't allow droids for some reason. Droids are useful! Why do they get so much hate? First they get thrown out of the cantina in A New Hope, and now this?
I call racism.
Yeah, I guess this really was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Anyway, they decide to not take the job because they've grown too attached to the droids. However, R2 and 3PO don't want them to miss this opportunity just because of them, so they leave in an escape pod. Yeah, they just bail. They don't even leave a note or anything. And there's no guarantee they'll still take the job. Maybe they got upset and went looking for them. This is just not cool. The voice acting in this isn't the worst I've heard, but it's also not the greatest. I love how you can tell where something was dubbed just by the subtle accents.
Master, what are those? I'm not hanging around to find out.
Boy, you sound awfully Canadian for someone from space. Although we did get to hear Cree Summer again, even if it was for a short time.
Be still, Kobe. Our father must concentrate. Learn to have patience, little brother.
Oh, and this guy sounds awfully familiar.
Let me introduce myself. Captain Kaibo Ren-Cha.
Oh, that's the guy that voices Mach! And come to think of it, that Empire guy kinda looks like Mach. Why does Star Wars keep connecting to rock and roll? Speaking of familiar voices, Jan's uncle kinda sounds like Yosemite Sam.
Suffering satellites, boy. What in the universe am I supposed to do with two prissy droids and a banged-up android? As if things weren't tough enough around here, you bring home another mouth to feed. God, sir.
Consort Sassafras and Droids! The animation was about on par with most cartoons at the time, meaning there were some inconsistencies, like humans having 4 fingers. Sometimes. Then there's 3PO having eyelids for some reason, and R2 looking like he has the consistency of Jell-O. And of course there were moments that were unintentionally funny. It's fun to just randomly pause and see what hilarity you uncover. Like this. Just look at this still shot, it's awesome. You know, I don't like to force these kinds of things, but this needs to be a meme. That smug look on Jan's face and that big open area that's just begging to have some text slapped onto it. I don't know what it would say, but have fun with it. This one's on me. Probably the biggest problem with Droids is it's a bit too familiar. I mean, just look at the stuff that happens. C-3PO and R2-D2 are lost in the desert, then they get sold to some average local who becomes a hero, and even Mungo goes through a similar development to Han Solo when he has to choose his friends over riches. So they pretty much stuck with the basics from the movies. Though it was neat seeing a lot of things from Star Wars in this show, like the ships, and even a few familiar characters show up, like the Max Rebo Band, the bounty hunting droid IG-88, and even Boba Fett shows up in one episode. There's even a few fun tongue-in-cheek moments.
Can't go any further. Any ideas, Thal?
I did some repair work for a stranger a long time ago. He never came back to pick up his speeder. This was in it.
My word, a lightsaber.
It should do the trick. Stand back.
This one has got to be my favorite.
You can't do this.
Oh, yes, we can. Any preferences as to a new name? You'll need one to go with your new behavioral circuitry matrix.
Well, I've always been partial to anti... Oh dear, what am I saying?
The most surprising thing about this show was how many female characters were in it. There was Kia, who was an active member of the Rebel Alliance, Jessica, who was a no-nonsense skilled pilot, a girl named Auren helps Mungo, and she's a racing champion. By the way, this is the second time racing has come up in this show. Boy, Star Wars sure loves its races. And Cree Summers' character gets captured, but gets tired of waiting to be rescued, so she frees herself. Now, don't get me wrong, this show is not the epitome of girl power or anything. Personality-wise, the girls can be just as flat as the men. But Star Wars was not really known for having a lot of proactive female characters. At least not at the time. And now for my absolute favorite thing to come out of this show, R2-D2 dancing.
Really, R2, this is no time to dance.
Your day just got a little bit better because of that clip. You know, I'm surprised that people remember Ewoks more than Droids. Ewoks wasn't that bad, but in my opinion, Droids was way better. With Ewoks, they took side characters that should not have existed on their own and made them the focus of an entire series. They definitely tried to make something out of it, but it fell short. Droids also took side characters, but they made the right decision and kept them side characters. So this technically wasn't their show. They were just along for the ride, and all they did was help out and provide comic relief. Just like they did in the movies. Not to mention, this show followed 3 well-organized narratives where there was a lot of action that feels like it belongs in Star Wars. This show is not perfect by any means, and it can be as clunky as most 80s cartoons, but I think there's enough here to call this underrated. So that's Star Wars Droids. Not a masterpiece, but I'd say it's worth a watch. Didn't I say this was a review trilogy? What else is there? Well, there was the animated short from the holiday special, but that was like 9 minutes long. Not really worth dedicating an entire episode to. I guess there were all those Lego specials, but it's not really my thing. I talked about Clone Wars, I talked about Ewoks, I talked about Droids, I even mentioned Star Wars Rebels. There's gotta be something I'm overlooking. Something super obscure that only someone like me would remember. Oh no. Oh no! The Droids TV special!